Okay. Hello. How's that? Can you hear me? I'm hoping Mr. Andrew Welch will be in my comments box in a second. He says close to the mic. Right, let's see if I can turn it up. That appears to be max. Right, just bear with me 1 second. Andrew Welch is just teaching me how to stream. Oh, here we go. I can crank it up. Let's try that. How's that sounding? Is that better? Yes, Andrew, I have selected the correct mic. I think. I'm entirely new to all of this. Please bear with. Yeah, that's the right one. Right, how's that? Can you hear me better now? Lovely. Hi, Matt. It's about the same, says Andrew Welch. Right, let's turn it up more. Let's go up to 200. Let's go mad. How's that? 1 2 1 2 testing. Oh, no change. Okay, what I might do is just sit closer to it. But it is an annoying little mic. I'll tell you what, I'll just speak loudly. Maybe you can all just turn up your volumes. Hopefully this is enough for you guys. What am I up to? I sound distant. I think that's because I'm using a crap microphone, which probably isn't the best thing to do. Just try this. It'd be good if I could just like, yeah, is that better? Yeah, I can't get any closer to the microphone. I think it's up to the max on the volume slider, Andrew, and I've in fact got into the advanced. Oh yeah, good idea. Let me do it in system preferences. That's a much better idea, isn't it? Input volume. Right, how's that? Oh, here we go. I can see that going through the roof. There we go. Is that better, everybody? Right. There we go. Good. Right. Thanks for the pointer about hitting the audio preferences. Laptop, which of course is just struggling because yeah, it's fairly ancient, but I'm gonna crack on anyway. Well, I can't really I'm hoping maybe I could just move my laptop further away. It isn't actually the built-in mic, it's the mic on my webcam, and I could tell it selected it, but if I just turn it up a bit more, then you can turn down at your end, and it'll be less bad. It's definitely not using my built-in mic, and if it is, it's lying to me. Because I have selected webcam in all of the preferences. Okay, here goes. Was that painful? Did you hear any tapping? Nothing from Andrew Welch. Yeah, I am using it. It's just I'm in a nice quiet room, and the only noise in here, apart from my own voice, is the fan on my computer, which I can't seem to like get rid of. Anyway, hopefully you can bear with me. I will dig out professional microphones from my loft for the next live stream, if I ever do another one. Anyway, what I'm going to do now, yes, I am delayed, Andrew, I do realise that. I couldn't seem to get rid of this infernal delay, but I'm going to crack on anyway, and I will respond to comments as they come in. Please do talk to me as I go along, ask questions, and I will backtrack and answer them. As time goes on, you should be able to see my face now. Hello. This is slightly freaky. I'm enjoying the fact that there's some kind of mixing tool available. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is hopefully in about sort of 15-20 minutes max go over all of the basic features of the FFFields plugin, which I made recently. Just a quick bit of backstory. The backstory for this plugin is I spend a lot of my time developing sites that need various amounts. I get fed up rendering fields again and again and again on the front end and gluing it all together with the back end of Craft. One of the things that I wanted to do with this plugin was speed up that process so that I could just output fields, know they were going to work, and more importantly, know they were going to work with my existing field types. So for me, the critical thing with this plugin is that there is parity between your Craft field types and the front end forms that you go on and build. So what I've done is I've mocked up a little demo of a sort of simple job posting form where you can post a job, you can edit it, and then you can go and see the list of jobs. Very quickly, right, I'm diving into code now, and I hope you can see that well enough. Let me know if not, and I will just up the res. I'm just waiting for the lag to go away. So that I can see what's going on. Okay, well, this lag is taking forever. Anyway, this is the basic list view that we're looking at now. Just let me know if it's not big enough and I'll zoom a bit. Fields uses Tailwind to do the rendering, but as a result of that, you could, if you wanted to, provide your own Tailwind CSS file and override absolutely everything that's in there. Equally, at some point in the future, you'll be able to override all of the classes that are sort of buried in the view components that are coming out. But for now, you can't override those classes, so the only way that you'd be able to sort of override everything is either through adding your own style sheet that just hacks around and overrides stuff, or you can turn off including the default Tailwind stuff that I've got and output your own one. So the basic setup of a page that uses fields is looks a bit like this. This is a standard Craft template with some bits outputting at the tops, and then this is just a standard loop outputting all of the jobs. Right down at the bottom is a very basic tag which just includes all of the fields, JavaScript and CSS that we need. If you want to exclude the CSS, then all you have to do is pass something into this, which I'm just going to look up because I can't remember what it is. Blah, 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 blah. It's up here, isn't it? Oh yeah, you just have to pass false into here and it will stop rendering the CSS from Tailwind. So there you go, you could then add your own CSS file and crack on, but we're going to leave that in for now and move on to the fun stuff, which is in our edit. So here, this is a sort of, I'm just going to switch to roots first. What I've got is I've got two roots. I've got job/new and job/edit/entry ID. This is a fairly normal setup for you know, the back end of Craft as well as the front, you know, as well as sort of normal things that you do on the front, where we just have a root for making a new job and a root for editing existing ones. I'm using the same template to handle both of these things because why not? It makes it all a bit easier. And to start with, I've made this template really simple, and then I'm just going to go over sort of filling it out into the full jobs form. Right at the top, I've just got a bunch of stuff that's setting the entry based on whether there's an entry ID passed in or not, and if there is an entry ID, but there isn't actually an entry that matches that, then it just redirects to the jobs listing page, so that you can't just randomly hook it into other elements. Blah 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 blah. This is the basic form wrapping object here, and that translates to, I'm going to go to post a new job, that translates to this little part here. You could theoretically ditch these form tags and just render the field yourself. That would allow you to wrap it in whatever Vue or JavaScript or even plain HTML form stuff that you wanted to, and just use the Fields plugin to render the actual field. What I want to do though is show you the other fun part of this plugin, which is that it hooks into Craft QL, and Craft QL lets you sort of interact with Craft elements and other things via its magical API. And so one of the things that I want to get familiar with to begin with is actually rendering a form around the fields, because that really makes this much more useful. So to do that, you just output a form start and a form end tag and surround your fields with that. The form start takes a variety of parameters. The first one is the mutation. This maps to the Craft QL mutation that you will have in the back end. In my case, that's for a section called jobs, so upsert jobs is the default for that. You can decide whether elements as they're submitted should be enabled or disabled by default. I'm setting mine to be enabled by default, and then you can set a redirect parameter, and in this case I'm telling it to redirect to job/edit/ID. Those tokens there are passed in the same way that they might be when you're sort of doing Craft templating in the back end, and basically that will take you to the edit view of the newly created job should it go through okay. You can do, there are other tokens that are supported there, like slug. I'm not sure if there are any more, you'll have to check the documentation, but I won't do that now. For the purposes of this demo, it's simple enough just to put ID in, because then I can pick that ID up at the top of this page again and load up the entry model that we've just made. For that, and then to enable, so that works, those two parts are all you really need to send a new job, but for editing existing ones you obviously need to know the element ID of the job that you want to edit. So we could just pass that into the element ID parameter here, and again, because we're doing a mixed template where we can submit new jobs and edit new ones, we'll just send in the entry ID if we have one. If not, we'll send null, and therefore we'll post a new one. So does that make sense so far? Hopefully that's not a million miles away. Basically, the difference from the front end perspective, whenever you wrap something in a form tag, is it just outputs a submit button as well. Now the other thing that you might want to do is override the text that's on that, and so we can do that by using submit text. And here I'm setting the default for that is save, as we can see here, and then when you press save and it starts to save the entry, it'll say saving. So I'm basically saying that if we're on an existing entry, then that's fine, go with the default. Otherwise I want to say post job, and the same for the submitting text, I want to say posting if we're posting a new job. So if I refresh that now, we'll see it now says post job. And actually, because of the way that I've set up the back end, slight preview of something else that's going to go on in a minute. Because of the way I've set up the back end, you can see I don't actually have any required fields on this, so you can literally post a new job with just a title. Because that's the only field that we've got there at the moment. So just into the fields, there's two different kinds of fields that you can output. You can either output a craft field, or you can output what at the moment I've called a special field, which is basically usually an attribute on an entry. So in this case the title, and in fact that is the only currently supported special field, but there will be others like post date or expiry date and all the other random things. Slug, that's another one. And obviously you'll need to be aware of the elements that you're submitting and the attributes that they support. So for example, at the moment users don't have URLs, so slugs and things are fairly irrelevant for them, but entries do, so you might want to allow people to edit the slug of the entry that they're submitting. In this case we just want to output the title, and we have two parts to deal with down here. We can send the value, and we can do that by saying if there's an entry, because we're on an edit view, then output entry title, otherwise send null because we're on a new view, and we want to require it. Now that's a bit clunky, so the other way that we could do it is we could just do element entry, and that will do exactly the same thing, but it will basically try and fetch the title off the element that you send. So you can't use the two together, you can use either value or element, but you may want to use value if you want to send something, you want to output something in that field that isn't actually on the element. So for example, if you wanted to modify what someone had already submitted for whatever reason, then you would be able to just override that on the value. So let's have a look at what this is looking like now. It should be exactly the same, and if we view all, we can see this is our job so far. Now what I'm going to do is start to output some of the other fields. Now all of these fields that I'm going to output map to the fields that I've created in the back end, and this is basically showcasing all the fields that are currently supported, which is all of the basic field types in Craft. So tell me if I'm going too fast. Copy this bit. I'm just going to replace that. Okay, so I've just added another field here below the title, which is my published light switch field, and I'm just going switch that back to that. And this is using render field because it's not a special attribute, and I'm passing in the handle of the field there, which is published. And this is a light switch field, so this should start to come out here now. Okay, so I have my little light switch, and I can, we're on an edit page now, I can send this and it will save it as off or on. Like that, very good. So I'm missing a little bit of code that needs to go around this. And this is all just Tailwind layout stuff that I'm sort of surrounding the form stuff with. I'll try and just break it out a bit so it's a bit easier to see. But yeah, these are the fields that we're on about. So let's just sort of grid out on there. There we go. Okay, next up, I'm going to output my short description fields. And that's going to go full width. And again, I'm going to require it. Now this, so now if I require it and I don't fill it in, it's going to shout at me that it can't be blank. This field I've set so that it shouldn't be longer than 80 characters, so if I insert too much text, then it's going to shout at me about that and prevent the save. And if I insert the right amount of text, then it'll be fine. And actually you can now see, if we go back here, that we've got a little description attached to the model. And if we go and view it in the back end, voila, we've got that there. And this is basically GraphQL being magical, and I am just rendering view components that directly tie into the GraphQL API. So the next field that I want is my long description, and I'm just going to quickly bash in some other ones now as well. I'm missing a div closing somewhere. Okay. Okay, and all of these should really switch to using the element because it's a bit cleaner. Okay, so here that was quite fast, but basically I've outputted long description, all of this without GraphQL. You don't need it, it just you could just comment out the form tags in this particular example and you'll be able to output all of this, it just won't go anywhere. You could then wrap that in your own JavaScript view component standard HTML form tag and submit that to, I think you might be able to submit it directly to Craft. I haven't actually tried that, or you could submit it to your own backend controller. So you don't need to use GraphQL, it's just a extremely easy way of handling the submission at the moment. But I will at some point work up an example of just submitting it sort of directly inside standard Craft form tags. But I might need to do a few things in Vue to make that happen, and I haven't quite got that yet. Okay, so let's get this. Why is this rendering badly? There we go. So I've output my long description, and then I've outputted this little collection of fields here, which are a mixed set of fields that have some checkboxes, a drop down, a number input, and another drop down. This number input is should be a number, and it won't let you. I need the form tags. Obviously the validation isn't going to work without the form tags around it, but yes, that is telling you that it must be a number, so I must put a number in there, and it, I think, oh yeah, there's no limits on that actually. I didn't set any limits. It's telling me that I need a description. So I could set that. I could say you get all of these things because it's the best job in the world. And the frequency is hourly at 100. La 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 la. Save. So now we've got that job posted with all those extra bits, and then quite quickly I'm just going to bosh on the other side. Excuse me, I've got a horrendous cold at the moment. Okay, just going to bosh on the other side. Some more fields. I came up with this element option today, so it's still using my old example. Right, and now it's going to validate that I need that company name. Let's do that. Good. So here's my job. Easily created and relatively fast. Yes, I'm copying and pasting, but essentially the basics of making a field are just to output this tiny piece of twig here, and then as discussed, you can require it or send an element if you're on an existing edit page, etc., etc. So it should hopefully save a bunch of time in creating fields, and then eventually you'll also be able to send stuff like an input class hash, an input class through, so that you can change the classes that are there. Blah, 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 blah. Andrew, does it use vValidate or ViewLidate? It uses ViewLidate because I fell out with vValidate. But again, that's only relevant if you're using the form tags that tie into GraphQL. At some point it might be submitted or not, so I haven't quite thought that through yet. Are there any other questions at this stage? Because there is another thing that I'd like to show you if you're all willing. Just give people a second. No, maybe not. Maybe there aren't any questions. Maybe you're all bored to tears. Now, obviously, this is all using Twig, which is great, and it means that, you know, it's fairly quick to get going. But it actually uses View under the hood. These Twig tags just output View components. So I'll go into quite quickly how you can translate these Twig tags into actual View markup, if you're more comfortable doing that. Yes, Andrew, it wouldn't hurt to just install and use GraphQL just for using fields. However, obviously it costs you another $59 to do that. But again, I think, you know, $118 to get this sort of setup going is relatively cheap. And frankly, I'm looking forward to the next job I can use it on, because it'll save me a lot of time. The other thing that you have to do is you have to have an element with the ID of fields somewhere around the outside of everything. Otherwise, the view instance can't attach properly, and I did forget to say that, but it is in the documentation, so you do need to make sure that that's wrapping things. So yeah, yes, it would make life easier just to use GraphQL, and I do generally suggest doing that. But again, there are situations where people might want to send it to their own controller rather than to just the standard GraphQL thing, because they want to do something slightly different with the data. They don't want to just create an entry or something like that. But I think, judging from what you've talked to me about before, Andrea, it'll probably be easier just to use GraphQL alongside it. What happens with this approach when JS isn't working on the front end client? Can there be a plain HTML fallback? Good question, Matt Wilcox. There could be a plain HTML fallback. There definitely isn't at the moment. But that is a good thought. It could be relatively automated, because I could just render the forms directly on the page instead of letting Vue render them. That's certainly something to think about. It could be done a couple of ways. You could use server-side rendering to render the Vue components first, or we could just send the content inside the Vue component. But let's get into in fact, there is a way that you could do that right now, but it's slightly convoluted. But let's get into that anyway, because I want to show you really what fields equivalent Vue tag. But you're going to have to bear with me, because I need to keep looking at what the yeah, that's just that, what the syntax is. So let's start with the form tag. So we're going to wrap the whole thing in the form tag, which is just, everything is prefixed with FFF for the sake of not ruining anyone else's projects. And then we can just use the same parameters that you're using in Twig. I really need to configure. PHP still on better. Showing you how little I'm able to type. ID. So I'm going to say in this entry dot ID or null as a string. Yeah, that's right. So I'm going to say in this example here, because we're now delving into the Vue API rather than the PHP one, well, Twig into PHP one, we'll sort of sanitize some of this for you. We're going to say if there's an entry, then output the entry ID as a sort of raw number, otherwise output null as a string. That's quite important to bear in mind. And then we'll leave off the submit text and stuff for now, because it's fairly irrelevant. Right, so that should, fingers crossed, work. And we've got save and saving, voila. And if we wanted to change the submit text, we would just go submit text equals submit, and then what is it? It's there. Never know how to get an ellipsis. So refreshing, is that right? What's going on? Okay, I appear to have done something wrong. Oh yeah, of course. actually got my casing wrong for view, I think, and that isn't element ID, it's actually ID. So there we go. That's working the same, but using the View API. So the View API is largely undocumented, well, entirely undocumented at the moment because it isn't fully, I'm not fully settled on it. Things like that should probably be replaced with element ID so that they match the Twig API. But I will get there. Now, if we wanted to render a title field, instead of using render special, which actually just does a bunch of stuff and then it goes and gets a config model and renders out a field tag like this, what we could do is, I am just copying this. Okay, well I'll just go over it now quickly, but there's going to need to be a helper method shoved in at some point. And I'm just going to do this on the posting a new job form. So there's my basic view field, and then I can pass in the handle, which is title, and I could pass in required true. Now this will work fine for posting a new job, he says. What have I done wrong? What have I done wrong? Ah, the joys of live streaming. Ah, yeah, of course. But I do need to actually pass in different data. Which I need to do along the lines of this. Type. Is that going to be enough? That might be enough just to render. This is why this stuff isn't documented yet, because even I don't quite know what they are. That's what it needs to be. Oh, but because it's view, it'll need to be that. And then we'll actually also need to this. Yeah, okay. Right, and what this is doing is just telling the view component all of the different information that it needs to do. Right now, this is entirely clunky. And in fact isn't working. So I think I might just bail on trying to show you that, because there's a lot of helper methods in here that just need exposing to the front end. But anyway, what you'll be able to do at some point in the future, rather than all of this stuff, is just do get config and then put your handle in, and that will get and set all of the appropriate config options for that field type and shove them into the wrapping field object. But essentially, the View API is still not completely set and or documented, so that is why that demo failed gloriously. But basically, my aim is that you'll be able to either use the View API or the Twig API, depending on which you want to do, because there could be advantages to just using the straight up View API, particularly if you've got other View components that want to use these fields. So for example, you are creating a sort of bigger application and you want to load the View components that Fields provides on their own, then you would be able to do that inside your own View components if you wanted to. But once I've actually got all of that working, I will document it and show people how to do that. The other thing that sort of leads on from that is, at some point I'd like to be able to get it so that you don't actually have to render any twig at all. So at the moment you have to sort of like provide information for, you know, it has to hit some PHP, otherwise it doesn't know about all of the attributes for that particular field. But I want to be able to fetch them over Ajax sort of automatically, so that you can just say, I want to download all of the information in one hit for this page that defines all of my fields, and then I can just use View however I want to. Do you see what I mean? Does that make any sense? Let's get that back. Render special. There we go. So yeah, that would allow you to mix this into your existing View application a lot more reliably, and be able to sort of have a fully featured application and just drop in the field components where you wanted them. But there's quite a bit more work to do to finish all of that off. So yeah. The first way, you know, the first iteration of this plugin is basically use it via Twig, and slowly I will expose the View API so that you can use it with just View, and then eventually it will be able to load all of the setup information for each field over Ajax so that you don't have to use Twig at all, and then that sort of paves the way for doing completely headless projects, but still using this sort of quick method of generating fields. So that's the sort of do that, or you can sort of fairly uselessly use the View API to render the form bits. So there we go, that's a quick overview of FFFields, and I guess that's all I've really got to show you right now. Are there any questions? Oh, wrong thing. Just delete that one. That happened because of a previous mistake. Any other questions surrounding this? I'm just going to give people a few moments to respond because I know there's quite a delay. No questions, says Andrew, other than perhaps why the heck have you made this? I don't see the reason. La, la, la. Look, I can change all the values on this job. How nice. Well, okay, I'm going to bow out for now. Feel free to hit me up on Discord if... no worries, Matt. Feel free to hit me up on the Discord Craft group if you want to talk to me about this. It will be available to rewatch. Over the next few weeks I will be fleshing it out and providing some of these more useful features, as well as providing Matrix, which is the next thing that I'm working on. So hopefully I'll just give you a quick preview of that now. Just going to wait for this to load. Just using TwigPack to load the development version of this project. And of course, because I'm live streaming, it's like hammering my computer. Come on. Oh, maybe I can do this a different way. Oh yeah, just do it like that. I've already built it, haven't I? Well, my computer's grinding to a halt, but I was hoping to show you a quick matrix demo. And yes, Andrea, there will be helper methods for doing deletes, and there will be asset file uploads, there will be date fields, and there will be matrix fields. I'm basically doing matrix first, then date fields, then assets. I'll probably do deletes somewhere along the way, because they're relatively simple. But yeah, this is my little Billy Basics matrix field that doesn't work yet. None of that's even wired in. But yeah, we'll have a little matrix, sort of stripped back matrix option. Hopefully, it's just sort of halfway built at the moment. But yeah, check the roadmap on the GitHub if you want to see where I'm up to. But yeah, I'm going to be working on matrix, dates and times. I probably will do assets before I do much of these other ones. I need to do a lot of these attribute things fairly quickly as well, because otherwise, in fact I've done enable disabled, otherwise it's not very helpful. But yeah, a good point. It would also be useful to have something that helps you delete something, which I'll figure out how to do. That's basically just a Craft QL mutation though, so you could technically write that yourself and shove it behind a button. But yeah, it would make sense if I wrapped it all up for you. So yeah, anyway, I hope this has been useful and given you an idea of what the heck the plugin's all about. Like I say, hit me up on Discord if you would like to chat to me about that, or email me Josh at angel.io. Yeah, I'll probably do another live stream when I've sort of pumped out the next set of features, so that you can get a better idea of the more, kind of complete picture that's in my head. But yeah, if you want to get going with it now, then it's there on the plugin store, and it could be useful for sort of simpler projects at the moment. So yeah, anyway, I will hopefully talk to some of you outside of this live stream. Talk to you soon. Bye.